Hello, everyone. This is Danny Sharabani with rePORTAL Software. We're just going to wait for a few more minutes until everybody else joins in, and then we'll begin the webinar. Once again, good day to everyone, or good evening, depending on your time zone. My name is Danny Sharabani. I'm a principal with rePORTAL Software, and I'll be leading the webinar today regarding rePORTAL, which is a distribution suite for Crystal Reports, Microsoft SQL Server reporting services, and our own embedded tool, which is SQL-based. Before we begin, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping items, and then we'll get into a brief slide presentation covering the the history of rePORTAL, some of the main features. We'll get into a demo of the product, and then have a short intro or message from Ken at Find It Easy Software, who is co-sponsoring this webinar. A few housekeeping questions first. The attendees will be muted. This is to improve sound quality, obviously. If you need to ask questions throughout the course of the webinar, please feel free to do so. You can use the chat window that's part of your GoToMeeting control panel to ask any questions you may want. You can direct the questions to everyone or to the organizer or myself, and we'll be happy to respond. The webinar will be recorded, and it will be available as a download. We'll be sending out a link to download the webinar later on, so you can review it at your leisure later on. So with that said, let's go ahead and begin the webinar. A little bit about rePORTAL itself. We've been active for over 10 years. We've got over 800 customer sites around the world using rePORTAL, all types of industries, nonprofit, government, private sectors, really any organization that's currently utilizing either Crystal or SSRS reports could be a candidate for us. Tens of thousands of users and tons of reports have been published and distributed and used by our customers through rePORTAL. So there's quite a long history. It's a very stable product, and it's been out for many, many years. Some of the basic features available in rePORTAL: we support natively Crystal Reports and Microsoft SQL Server reporting services through our product, so you can publish either your Crystal Report RPT files all the way through version Crystal 2016, 8 through 2016, all of those are supported. SSRS reports are also supported as well. We do have a question. Unfortunately, Kathy, we can't make you the presenter. You're just going to be able to view our screen for the webinar. It's a server-based license, so it's a very cost-effective solution. There's no user limit, there's no processor limit, there's no report limit. It's basically a per-server licensing mechanism that's extremely cost-effective. And of course, it is a web application that allows you to manage everything online through a web browser. There's no need for any special software to be installed on the local client. A very comprehensive security model is available. We're going to go through that in the demo that allows you to restrict access by folder, by user, by group, and even data within a report can be restricted by user as well. In addition to reports, we also support many different file types as well as web apps. So any Microsoft Office document, for example, text, URL, PDF files, all those can be managed and distributed through rePORTAL as well. We do also provide, in addition, our own SQL reporting tool with every edition of our product, so that allows you to generate either on-demand or scheduled reports through our own SQL tool, which we use any standard SQL syntax. Very powerful scheduler. Please make sure your microphone is muted. Just going to check that again there. Okay. A very powerful scheduler that has bursting capabilities. We'll go through that in the demo as well. An integration API, so you're able to access rePORTAL objects and manipulate objects through your own application by linking to our .NET API. We can provide additional information on that later if you require that. Localization support, so different languages are supported. You can create your own custom language used for rePORTAL depending on what sort of languages you're using in your geographic area. It is scalable, so you can scale out to a number of different servers in case the load for your reports increases beyond a certain point, so that's certainly feasible as well. And we do have a special promotion available for the people who sign up for this webinar. We'll be going through that towards the end. So at this point, I'm going to walk through a demo of the product. And again, if you have any questions through the course of the demo, please feel free to use the chat window in your GoToMeeting control panel. I'll be happy to respond as we go along. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Let's try that again. So rePORTAL is a web application, and it runs on Microsoft's web server stack IIS. And essentially, it's going to allow you to manage, distribute, and schedule your reports. You can also use rePORTAL as a tool to publish and distribute any type of file or document, as well as web applications, as we indicated earlier. We support 3 report writing tools in rePORTAL. The first is Crystal Reports. The second is Microsoft SQL Server Reporting Services, or SSRS Reports. And the third is our own built-in tool that is SQL-based. So if you're familiar with the SQL scripting language, you can certainly use that to create either on-demand or scheduled reports. There are 2 broad methods of distribution in rePORTAL. The first is the portal component, which allows a user to connect and authenticate using their web browser. They can then run reports in real time by entering parameter values. The reports then get generated in real time and then published to the user's browser page from where they can print or export or drill down. So that's more the on-demand or ad hoc mechanism, more of a pull type reporting tool. The others are scheduling engine. So that allows you to automate report delivery based on date, on time, and event, and can be used to automate the delivery. So that's more of a push mechanism that's also available. You can combine both of those distribution mechanisms in one product, or you can get one or the other depending on what your specific requirements are. Once a user is authenticated, they get to what we call the report listing page, which is what we're looking at right now. This is sort of the main interface to the application. It's completely customizable. So you can brand it with your own logo, your own site title. There's a search section that allows a user to quickly find a report or a document rather than having to navigate through the whole tree. You have a news section that's used to broadcast information to your user community in the form of news. You have the ability to customize, as I indicated earlier, language options for your different users depending on your localization requirements. And then the user is going to basically see and be able to see and access the folders and reports that you as an administrator have given them permissions to see. So once they log in, they're only going to be able to access the folders and reports that they have been given rights to see. You have the traditional or classic view, as we call it, that the user sees this folder or tree-based structure. The user can also create their own custom view, which allows them to create their own dashboards, their own widgets, essentially, and make the look and feel of the desktop appear the way they want to see it when they log in. And that's customizable by user. So as we see here, there are several folders here. I'm going to expand one of them. In this case, you'll see a series of links, each of which is tied to a particular report. In this case, they're crystal reports. When I click on a report link, the parameters page opens up. In this case, they're in the form of simple input fields. So if I enter a parameter value here and click submit, the report is going to be generated in real time. It's actually accessing the data as we speak and then returning it to the browser where the viewer can then drill down, they can print, they can export, do all the processing options that they need all through a web browser, of course. Here's another example where instead of input fields, you have a dynamic pick list that's built on the fly. You'll notice that if I change the value on the first parameter, it'll change the values on the second parameter to correspond to that. So that's an example of dynamic and cascading parameter support that's already built into our product. And I'll show you how that option works in a moment. Same things with SSRS reports, of course. So you're able to publish your RDL files through rePORTAL. One benefit of using rePORTAL in this fashion is that you don't require any SQL Server licenses. You simply design your reports, your SSRS reports using Visual Studio or any other design tool and then publish them directly in rePORTAL. There's no need for a connection to SQL Server or any other licenses. And as I mentioned before, the scheduler, we're going to get into that in a moment. SQL reports, so that's our own report writing tool that's also available. Forms, documents, web apps, all those can be managed and distributed through rePORTAL as well. As an administrator, I have access to the menu bar here at the top where I can manage the various modules of rePORTAL. We're going to start out with the user maintenance module. This is where you would manage the users that are going to have access to the application. So we'll drill into an existing user to see how that's set up. We support both Windows authentication, so you can tie the user accounts to your Active Directory structure for single sign-on, or you can use anonymous authentication, which is what this demo site is currently using. Once you set up a user, you assign a role to the user. There are 3 roles available. The user role has access only to the report listing page, which we saw initially. Then there are 2 administrator type roles. The difference between them is that the MIS is sort of like a super user with complete access rights, whereas the administrator has slightly fewer privileges. If you're using anonymous authentication, you can assign a login password. Otherwise, of course, it would be controlled by Active Directory. The next several fields relate to our scheduler, specifically the bursting engine. Bursting is a very powerful tool that allows you to break a report apart by user, such that each user receives their own unique subset of the data, their own instance of the report. And you can then encrypt that instance by user, and for email and fax delivery, this is where the user's address would be stored for bursted delivery. There are other mechanisms for bursted delivery as well, and we'll get into that in a minute. You can also allow individual users the ability to schedule their reports. You can consolidate output from multiple schedules to the user. Consolidation also comes into play if you set up what are known as manager-subordinate hierarchies. So you can set up any level of relationships between managers and their subordinates. The manager would then receive a roll-up based on the reports received by his or her subordinates. You can manage the user to be part of one or more groups in rePORTAL. You can control permissions at the user level. And then you have the concept of aliases, which are like tags or identifiers that you link to a user login, which describes some attribute, for example, a salesperson code, a customer ID. You can then link these aliases to the parameters inside your report. That then allows your report to filter data dynamically based on user login. And I'll show you how that linkage occurs in a moment. Again, if anybody has any questions during the course of the demo, feel free to pose a question through the chat window. I'd be happy to respond. Groups essentially allow you to manage multiple users at once. With groups, you can also assign templates, so that would allow you to customize the look and feel of rePORTAL based on group membership. You can manage group users within a group, of course, control permissions at the group level. And then you also have the ability to assign group aliases, which are similar to user aliases, except that with a group alias, all the members of the group share the value of the alias. We have a utility that allows you to quickly import users and or groups from your Active Directory structure into the rePORTAL data repository. So this utility can be used instead of individually generating or creating the users inside rePORTAL. The report maintenance module is where you manage the product from the report and document side. So let's take a look first at how an on-demand report is published, and then we'll look at a scheduled example. I'm going to use Crystal here as the example. SSRS is published very much the same way, except that you just point to your RDL file rather than your RPT file. So when you publish a report or a document, you assign the appropriate type. In this case, it's Crystal. You provide a name, whatever it is you want. You browse and you point to your RPT or RDL file or any other file on your network. You assign a display text. This would be a user-friendly link that would appear on the report listing page for the user to click on. This again is an on-demand report, so it's not scheduled. You can pick an export format if you didn't want to use the viewer. Of course, the user can export from the viewer itself. You'd specify a folder location. These are the virtual folders that you'd create yourself inside rePORTAL to categorize your reports. The Parameters tab is going to display the parameters you've embedded inside your Crystal report. We would publish the parameters here on the left, and then for each one you can decide how you want to handle it. It's a very powerful tool. The default is an input parameter which allows the user to enter whatever value they want at runtime. You can create a dynamic list of values based on a SQL report or a database field from inside your report itself. You can link it to an alias value, which makes the parameter hidden. And then the value associated with that alias that we saw earlier would be passed to the parameter at runtime, causing the report to filter data dynamically. So you can have a single generic report that delivers different information depending on who's logged in and running it. You're even able to create complex queries to fill your parameter values from your own tables. So you can call stored procedures, multi-table joins based on variables and user login information that would fill these parameter values for you. The data sources, so whatever your report connects to, we support a variety of different data providers, ODBC, OLADB, different clients. You'd set your connection information here, and then rePORTAL would connect via those settings. And then the viewer options for both Crystal and SSRS are available here. You can control what the user has access to. Very good. So let's move on to the scheduler and see how a scheduled report is published. This is another Crystal report. Again, SSRS behaves very much the same way. So I'm just going to use Crystal as an example. This particular report is being scheduled. As you notice, there's a variety of different export options available for the scheduler. To create a schedule, I simply click on the link. It changes the window to a scheduling window where I can set my options. It's a very powerful scheduler, so you have the ability to archive output. This allows you to retain any number of prior instances that you can then use for historical or auditing purposes. The bursting capabilities, so we discussed this briefly earlier. Bursting allows you to break a schedule apart by user, and there's two ways to do that, either through an internal burst, which picks up the users you've set up inside rePORTAL itself, or using what's called an external burst. So you can create a SQL report that will retrieve the destination, for example, let's say the email address and the parameter values from your own database tables that then feeds the scheduler in order to generate the separate instances for each report. You can encrypt outputs if it's going to PDF or Excel. You can compress output to zip format if it's too large. There's a variety of different file naming conventions, so you can embed dates, parameter values, names, all that can be embedded dynamically in the output file name. Your scheduling options, question from Amy, do I have calendar where I can schedule? Yes, you can create business calendars, and we'll show you how that's done, and those calendars can then be used in multiple schedules. We'll get into that in a minute. Your scheduling options are set here, daily, every X days, weekly, every X weeks, and specific days of the week, monthly, every, specific day of every X month, or you can create, first, second, third, fourth, last weekday of every X months. You can even create your own custom schedule. So if you didn't have regularly recurring dates, you can use those. A question from Brian. So an external burst is a way to dynamically select recipients. Yes, it's a way to essentially break a schedule report apart by user. So for example, let's say you have a commission report or a sales report that you need to deliver to different recipients, but each recipient only sees their own information. They shouldn't see anyone else's. Bursting is a great way to do that. So you have one schedule, it then automatically breaks apart and is delivered to each recipient with only their information embedded in it. So again, the custom calendar allows you to create your own custom dates for scheduling. We have support for holidays, skip the holiday, run it on a prior or next business day, daily frequency options, and duration options available as well. And of course, you can use a calendar to associate with your schedules as well. We'll show you where the calendars are set up in a minute. The Destinations tab allows you to specify where the schedule is going to be delivered to. And of course, you can mix and match email, printer, FTP, file share locations, SharePoint locations, the website itself, fax, all are available destinations, and we'll see how those are set up in a minute. The Parameters tab, again, you can set up the parameter values associated with the schedule here. The dynamic values are all supported, SQL queries, aliases, all those can be passed. Now, in addition to date and time-based scheduling, we also offer event-based scheduling. So you can trigger a schedule to execute based on an event, such as the existence or modification of one or more files. A lot of our customers use this, for example, when a database record is generated. For example, an order is received or a new customer is created. That then can trigger a schedule to execute and run a file or run a report. In addition, you can also execute batch and command files before and after a schedule. This is useful if you want to do any kind of pre or post-processing on the schedule itself. The Addressing tab allows you to specify addressing for the schedule if it's going to an email or SMS or fax destination. You have a variety of different options, users, groups, email, SMS groups, or you can add addresses manually down here, multiple addresses separated by commas, of course. We support 2 CC, BCC. Admins would receive any kind of exception message, so they'd be notified if anything went wrong. All right, moving on. The folder maintenance module is where you can create your own virtual folder structure. And we got a question from Brett. Is there a way to pull up a list of all schedules for reports so that they can be maintained in bulk versus by the ones? You can see, well, all our data are stored in a SQL Server database. So you can create even your own report that queries our database and pulls up all of those. In addition, Find It Easy, which is our partner here as well, provides change analysis software that can point to once the webinar is done. That also allows you to make changes on a bulk basis. Can I also pull up a list of reports based on specific parameter values? Let me just jump ahead and answer Brett's question. So there are a variety of ways you can search for schedules. You know, the type of schedule you can search for, email recipients or fax recipients or destinations can be searched for. When a job starts and ends can also be searched for. And again, all this information is stored in a SQL Server database, so that can be extracted. Can I FTP a schedule from Amy? Yes, FTP is also supported, SFTP. We'll get into the destinations in a second. So back to folder maintenance. This is where you create your own virtual folder structure to categorize your reports on the portal component. You can nest folders to any depth that you like. You can even sort objects within a folder if you don't like the default alphabetical sort, and then you apply permissions to the folder itself. And when you publish a report or a document to that folder, it's going to inherit those permissions by default. So back to the schedule maintenance module. So this is where you get a dashboard view of all of your schedules, what happened, when they ran, when they're next going to run. You can also add and modify schedules from here as well. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you can set parameter values in order to filter results for specific schedules as well. Packages are basically containers into which you can place one or more schedules. This is useful if you want to manage multiple schedules at once, or simply perform consolidation where you want to consolidate the output from multiple schedules into a single schedule for delivery to the user. So the schedules within that package will run as a unit, essentially. You can even then determine the sequence in which the schedules run within a package here, so you can determine that sequence as well. The destination module is where you can set up the destinations used by the scheduler, so email, printer, FTP, a file share. This is an example of an email destination where you can set your connections to your SMTP server. You're able to customize the subject and the body of the schedule, the message as well. We support HTML formatting, so you can embed all kinds of tags, links. Admins, as I mentioned earlier, would get any kind of error message, exception generated by the scheduler, and of course you can embed all kinds of global variables for, you know, delivering different information, data, messages, names, dates, things like that. Business calendars and holidays, I'm not going to get into that. It's pretty straightforward, but well, actually, let me go to the business calendar since there was a question on that. So you can create any number of business calendars that you can then apply to one or more schedules. You just set it up here with your scheduling options, and then these calendars can then be linked to any number of schedules or packages. Email SMS groups essentially allow you to create one form of distribution list using either a static list or a dynamic list of email or SMS addresses. These can then be used by the scheduler. Auditing, so we have a complete audit module that allows you to track user activity, who logged in, when they logged in, what report was run and by whom. All this information is stored in a SQL Server database, so you can extract that for your own purposes. And all this can be derived, for example, to determine which reports are run most often, which are never run, to get information like that from the audit tables. Templates allow you to customize the look and feel of the portal site based on group membership. So essentially you can create skins, as it were, templates with logos, banners, news sections. All those can be linked to templates and templates to groups, so that when a member of one group logs in, they might see something completely different than a member of another group might see. So this was sort of a high-level overview of the product. If anybody has any questions, I see a question coming in from Kathy. Can we maintain a library of cascading parameters that can be used by multiple reports or schedules? Yes. So you can create what's called a SQL report that essentially can be reused by multiple reports and parameters. So a SQL report would be any standard SQL script, such as the following. And you can also embed variables in there that allow you to pull information. So any script that you'd like can be then linked to the parameter inside multiple reports. So it can be reused. From Brian, do you offer discounts to nonprofit organizations? Yes, we do, Brian. You can certainly contact us once the webinar is over, and I'll be happy to provide that information to you. From Amy, can you talk about how to call a report via parameters in more detail? Well, if you publish the report in rePORTAL as an on-demand report, the parameters, depending on which ones you specify, will be displayed to the user here. You can pass parameters as a hidden value, or you can call through what we call our trusted computer API, so you can embed a web services link inside your own application that would then call a report, basically using rePORTAL as a back-end processing engine, and you can pass parameter values that way. That's a little bit more advanced stuff, but we do offer a mechanism for you to embed the report link inside your own application to call directly, and essentially rePORTAL will just be used as a back-end processing engine. From Carla, can rePORTAL be used with SSRS reports that pull data from an SSAS cube? Unfortunately, not now, Carla. Again, this is a limitation of the runtime we're using from Microsoft. Currently, that's not supported. Once Microsoft does support that, we certainly will as well. Amy, what type of cost is it per server? We can certainly send you the price list for our product, Amy. Once the webinar is over, just feel free to reach out to us on the contact information we're going to provide, and we'll be happy to do that. There is going to be a discount offered to webinar attendees as well. And the system right back to a SQL database. Yeah, you can use a SQL report. There's a question from Ken. You can use a SQL report really to do any kind of database operation. It just doesn't have to be a select statement. So you can call stored procedures, deletes, updates, all those can be done. Here's an example, for example, which is calling a system stored procedure. So that can be done. Can you review what export formats are available again? All right, from Amy. So the export formats for Crystal, let's take a look at those, and then I'll show you the ones for SSRS. They vary depending if it's scheduled or non-scheduled. So for a scheduled Crystal report, the export formats are as follows: PDF, Crystal, CSV, RDF, RTF, Excel, various Excel formats, HTML, rich text, tab separated, text, Word, and XML. For on-demand, they're slightly different. For Crystal, let me just get those for you as well. Those would be Word, rich text, Excel data only, Excel, and PDF. SSRS reports, they're a slightly different set. You'd have either PDF, image, Excel, and Word in the different formats. AD integration is real time. Yeah, no, AD integration is not real time. So we have an import tool that allows you to import users from AD. They're brought in, and then you can re-import any new users or groups into the rePORTAL data repository for that. We do offer as part of our API an integration module, so you can authenticate the user using your own application and also add and manipulate user objects inside rePORTAL as well, so that can be done. Is a SQL Server license required? No, it's not required. You can use SQL Server Express to hold the data repository, which is the free version. There's a question from Bearden. So no, you don't need a full version of SQL Server to use rePORTAL. You can use SQL Express. Amy, can I create a report to search backend databases for server connections and usernames to connect to by the report itself? Not quite sure what that question is, but let me take a stab at it. Basically, you are able to pass login credentials for rePORTAL as database connection credentials as well. So, for example, you can specify that you want to use the current logged in user credentials as credentials to pass to the data source itself rather than the ones you specify. I hope I answered that question. If not, we can certainly continue this after the webinar. You can contact me directly. Okay, I think we'll continue on with the demo. And again, if there's another question from Angie. Can you schedule a batch process or Windows PowerShell script? You can execute batch or command files before and after a schedule. So that's part of our trigger process. So if you go into a schedule, and the schedule commands can then be used to either execute a batch or command file linked to a PowerShell script or whatever it is, or a database command before and after a schedule. So that certainly can be done. Very good. So I'm going to okay, another question from Kathy. Managing multiple schedules. Can this be used to make a mass update to a parameter? You can use schedules to update parameter values. You can use packages to execute multiple schedules at once inside a batch. But again, using the SQL report, you can do any kind of database operation really that you want. So the SQL report that's embedded in our product can be used to do any kind of query, update, delete, or any kind of database operation can be used with that. Very good. And again, once the webinar is over, if any of you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to respond to any questions you might have. The special offer we're offering to webinar users, we're offering a 15% discount on all our server license fees through the end of March 2018. You can just contact us with the code webinar. And we'd be happy to send you a price list or any other information that you'd like. And again, any questions once the webinar is over, feel free to reach out directly. Our link, the email address is down here. It's going to be available on the download as well. You can go to our website, reportalsoftware.com, or feel free to call us directly. I'm going to hand over the baton to Ken. So that he can say a few words as well. Let me just find Ken here on the list.
Hey, Danny. Yes, I think I was able to unmute myself here.
Oh, very good.
So obviously, as you can see, rePORTAL is an extremely powerful scheduling tool. The reason we reached out to rePORTAL several months ago to ask if Danny would be and their team would be interested in forming a partnership was primarily because of the power and functionality included in rePORTAL itself, And the obvious overlap we have with our change impact analysis tool for the actual types of technology that rePORTAL itself supports. So we also support searching the metadata for within Crystal reports, within SSRS reports, within SQL code in various databases and so on. So there was an obvious overlap in technologies, but we also had supported other enterprise type scheduling report tools and saw this as an opportunity to reach out to a market where you can get the power of an enterprise class tool at a very affordable price. And that's, I think, a niche market that rePORTAL is the best at. There are other options in this space available, but we reached out to rePORTAL because they appear to be the best at doing what they do, for sure. We do have some extensions in our particular software that's specific to rePORTAL, and Danny had mentioned it, I think, a little bit earlier on during the demo, saying that we can do things like extracting a complete list of schedules so that you can see what is going to where and who and why and so on. And you can search through those lists if you need to make changes. And one of the things that we're going to add down the road is the ability to use their API in order to change, mass change, say, passwords or login credentials on various reports or scheduled activities. If you're, say, moving from a development environment to production, or if you're changing your production server, you're upgrading your database, or just to comply with your password change policies that you may have within your organization. So that's something we're going to add in our support for rePORTAL down the road. And I think that was really about it that I wanted to mention, and certainly very impressed myself, even just looking at all the bells and whistles that rePORTAL does have. So thanks, Danny.
No problem. Thanks a lot, Ken. I appreciate your time. And there's another question that just came in from Roland. SSRS 2008 required IE9, otherwise printing does not work. Can your system be used from Chrome or Edge? The answer to that is yes. We support all major browsers, Chrome, Edge, Safari, Firefox, IE. The runtime that we use with rePORTAL for SSRS is 2016. So it's the latest SSRS runtime, and printing is really an ActiveX plugin that typically works with IE, but that's the latest runtime we do support for SSRS is 2016, and we do support the latest browsers. Unless there are any other questions, then this will be the end of the webinar. Again, we will send out a link, a download link to a question from Amy. Are you cloud hosted or only on-site? It's not a cloud solution currently, Amy. This is an on-site installation, so you'd install it on your own web server, and it would run within your own network, either as an intranet and or an extranet. So as I said, we will go ahead and send out a link to download the complete webinar. Feel free to reach out to us via email, on the web, or by phone. We'd be happy to respond to any additional questions you might have. And once again, the special promotion for the webinar attendees will go through March 31st, and it's a 15% discount on all server license. Thank you very much for your attending, everyone. And again, let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.